Hey everyone, welcome back to Pretending with Dice. As always, I'm your host AJ. I'm super honoured to be joined for today's interview by a returning guest who listeners will have heard previously on our Dragon Meet 2019 Roundtable episode, Richard of the D20 Future Show. Thanks so much for joining me. How's it going?
Oh, not too bad. Thanks for having me on. I say not too bad. I mean, we're in the middle of the third of who knows how many lockdowns. So
yeah, the situation continues.
I think we all say, all right, as if it's a bit of a question. I think that's pretty much what we all do now.
There's definitely an asterisk next to that if it was written. All right,
yes, absolutely.
Considering, yeah. Yeah. So for listeners who may not know, I've been kind of sort of starting all of these this new interview series with this. Why don't you give a quick rundown of what your podcast is about for our listeners, just as a sort of a quick intro for what you're all about and all that.
The D20 Future Show is an actual play podcast. We play the tabletop role-playing game D Future, and then we did it and put it out as a show. And sometimes, idiot. So it's quite the logic tends to be that I write quite a serious campaign, and my players are Wallies throughout, and we enjoy the tension.
I feel like, yeah, that's a bit of a universal experience as a DM. I can definitely attest to that. Of like, okay, I've got these big ideas, I've got the storyline and everything, and then players come into contact with it, and all of a sudden it's like, oh no, this is not going the way I thought it would.
I do at least anticipate it, so
yeah,
that gives me a bit of an edge, and I'm not too emotionally interested in the serious nuance layers. I say that as if this latest campaign has any. We're currently working through a superhero campaign. I am live hacking D20 mod who works as a superhero, which probably is completely the wrong way of doing it, but it is what we're doing. So here we are.
Yeah, I mean, it's a big undertaking to learn a completely new system, really.
It is. It's something we do a fair amount, actually, on the show, is play different games. We've had at least one guest GM, but often it's just I have a new game and we try it out. So we've played the starter set for the Fantasy Flight Star Wars with my wife as one of the players, which was a nice change. That was a system, I have to say, I didn't fall in love with the system, but I had a lovely time doing it.
Yeah.
And I am... this is an exclusive, only if people care. I'll get to play the Expanse RPG at some point fairly soon. I want to bring our current D20 Future arc to a close, and then we're going to switch over to the Expanse, which game that I backed on Kickstarter, and so I promised myself I would definitely play. And it's really good, and I've been playing it a little bit through lockdown, and it's really great, so I'm excited to play the written Kickstarter campaign when we get started on that. Yeah,
I am. That's actually not the first mention of the Expanse RPG that I've heard up through doing these interviews. I think Fiona of What Am I Rolling brought it up. I think I don't know if this was something that's been announced or not. Did you played that with her as a group? Did you? Or
yeah, I ran an adventure I wrote during lockdown for the What Am I Rolling crew. I have no idea when it's going out, so I don't know if this I'm announcing something that is yet to be announced, but yeah, we had a really good time playing. It remained just really X system, creating really tense kind of. I've tended to run these inches as sort of you start with a ratchet of tension and then you just keep ratcheting it up until something breaks.
I think that's a fun way of running a game, though. Just sort of see what's the point where the players will go, wait, no, you know.
Yeah, at what point do they realise that things are really bad?
Yeah,
and how will they cope? Yes, we played as I say, an adventure I'd written during lockdown and run for. Because I was furloughed the lockdown, I had the luxury of a lot more time than I normally do to prep. So I wrote adventures, which I'm sort of been trying to train myself to do less prep because I'm not sure it's that much better for all of the extra prep that I do.
There's kind of a balance to be had between, like, okay, am I going to prep everything or am I going to prep an outline and then just roll with the punches kind of thing? It's
and I'm a bit guilty of writing box texts and statting up every NPC that they might possibly meet and taking things in a series of different directions without anticipating that my players might do something completely different anyway, at which point I've been all the prep, or that the box text, it just sounds like I'm reading, so it's no serier than if I kind of vaguely know the sort of thing they're going to say and I make it up. So Yeah, as I say, I'm trying to train myself. But having done that, I then wrote down these adventures that I'd played with a group online to just sort of work them up and then publish them or publish it is a strong word, but on the Expanse GM Facebook group for other people to run.
Yeah, it's definitely a system. Like, I mean, you I think when we last spoke, which was, I guess when we were doing the online Jason Statham's Big Vacation game for the online Dragon Meet, you'd mentioned about the Expanse then, and I think I said I've just started watching the show. Like I was, I'm years behind in it, and I'm I'm a little bit further in now. I'm towards the end of season 3, so I'm getting there. But yeah, I'm definitely interested in picking up the game at some point, because I've now that I'm sort of deeper into the show and I'm hearing good things, like I say, from yourself, and Fiona mentioned it, and it's sort of it keeps popping up as a sort of thing in, whether it's on Twitter or something. I keep going, oh, they had the Expanse RPG. That's another person saying about it. So I feel like that's going to be very shortly making its way into a shopping cart somewhere. But
I don't think you'll be disappointed. It's a really good system. I'm not hugely familiar with the adventure game engine, which I think it's called, although I doubt it because I got it wrong when I interviewed Chris Pramus, who wrote the game, so that was, or who owns Green Ronin and had a lot of input to it. So that was a bit awkward.
Yeah.
But the AGE system, which is based on 3D6, which was first developed for, as I understand it, the Dragon Age RPG, and has been applied to Fantasy Age, to Modern Age, the new Modern Age sort of. Not sure whether it's a system in and of itself called Threefold, which is sort of gliders adventure where you're travelling to different dimensions all the time.
Okay.
And there's Will Wheaton wrote a science fantasy set, which is, the campaign was called Ashes of Volcana, and
I watched that.
Titan's
Grave. They did
Grave.
a show of that, didn't they? Titan's Grave.
They did, yeah. So that I have a copy of that somewhere, but that's another system that the engine has been applied to. So there's a few out there, and if you've played any of them, I think it's relatively easy to pick up.
Yeah. God, I haven't thought about Titan's Grave for, it's got to be, it's years, right? Because that was way back in the day.
It was a long time ago.
Yeah.
Long before a legal dispute started between Geek and Sundry and Will Wheaton, which is why there's been no more Titan's Grave.
I did kind of wonder, because it seemed like they put a lot of resources into that at the time. I mean, this is completely off topic of, let's say your own podcast, and I'll get easily distracted. But it felt like it was like a big production at the time. There was like art and everything, and fully studio produced, and then they did like 5-6 episodes and then nothing else, sort of thing. So. Yeah.
I understand that there is. So I have the campaign somewhere. I have not had the chance to run it, but there is another book that is prepared. I'm not entirely sure what but it's a source book of some kind. But until this legal dispute, essentially, who owns it is resolved, then it can't be published. So, yeah,
it's always awkward when sort of copyright issues come into the play on these things. It's this sounds like, sort of complaining about stuff that's none of my business really, but sort of it tends to kind of keep things from reaching the consuming. Sort of like, interesting properties get tied up in legal disputes for years, and it's an odd. Yeah,
absolutely. It's a shame that we can't have a nice thing because people are trying to decide who owns it. When in fact there's I'm sure a large collection of people who'd happily hand over money when they work out who it is.
Yeah. How on earth did we get onto that?
We were talking about the Expanse, and I started talking about the other Green Ronin games that are out there. Because ultimately we run a few different games on the D20 Future Show. We've played a bit of 5th Ed, which was funny because I think an awful lot of people, 5th Dungeons and Dragons defines role playing. I had not played until this campaign, which we're still playing a couple of years ago, I think, and we jump in and out. It gives me a break as the GM, which is quite nice.
Yeah.
So George, one of our cast, he DMs, and I have a rogue character because rogues are really straightforward to play, as far as I can tell. So that's great. You try and get sneak attack damage, and you put numbers into decks, and that all works for me.
Yeah. As soon as you're running around trying to get advantage, and then after that the enemies die is essentially how rogues work, as far as I can tell.
you roll all the dice you're allowed to, and then you say the amount of damage, and the GM how much crosses things out on their bits of paper.
Yeah, it's good that you've got like a kind of built-in thing then where you can take a break, like you say. I mean, it's something to go back to every once in a while. I mean, that's got to be. I mean, again, speaking as the majority of the time DM on Pretending with Dice, it's I never get to play as a player, essentially. So, yeah, it is
lovely to get a chance to play and a bit of injured pace. And I think, in all honesty, one number of my past humour with my diet of science fiction role playing games, really they want to play fantasy, so it's sort of one for me, one for them.
Yeah,
that sort of works.
Yeah, it's always. I mean, because we've done the sort of similar thing of kind of jumping between systems and settings and things. I mean, I'd say most of ours have been, I guess, a kind of jumping back and forth as we do, because we started with D&D. We did a kind of couple episodes of I guess not particularly popular. It was a Fantasy Flight one, but they kind of put out the 4 books, and then I've never ever seen anybody else talking about it, called End of the World, where you basically play as yourself, and it's like almost impossible to get hold of it anymore, even from Amazon and stuff, as far as I can tell. We did 2 episodes of that, and then we did more D&D, then we did Star Wars, and then it's sort of a bit of jumping back between sci-fi and fantasy. But yeah, it's interesting to sort of see. I always feel there's like a bit of a disconnect between me going, yeah, now I want to do Star Wars, and then a couple of people, and I'm not naming names or anything, but you can always tell there's some players are more interested in one thing than another, and that. So it's bringing them along for the ride is always the not the challenge. I just want to we're all out here to have fun, but I don't know quite what I'm trying to say.
Exactly
with this, to be honest.
But whatever it is, I think I agree with you. Yeah, it's it is the kind of continual thing that comes up with some role players and not others, which is there are other systems out there, guys. Let's play some other things. And while it can be hard work learning to run a new system, learning to play is usually not that difficult.
Yeah.
I mean, that's just in the context that I learned to run a system, and learning to play anything's much easier than that. So if I hold a couple of different systems in my head run, then surely with a character sheet in front of you, and which is essentially role playing, and then what dice do you roll, and you usually look for big numbers. That is a rocket science. We need to resolve a thing. It's time to roll the thing. So I'm always keen to try other systems and have people try other systems, because I think there are more interesting, different things out there. Which I should hasten to add should in no way says that I don't think that D&D 5th Ed is a pretty good game, because it's a really good game. I am, in fact, this evening I am running a group of people through Storm King's Thunder.
Nice.
As a 5th Ed, and we're having a really good time, and it's a really good system that flows really quickly and easily, and I've got a lot of nice things to say about it, but it isn't the be-all and end-all, and I like other things.
Yeah, I mean, and
in particular, I like sci-fi.
It's definitely a system that I've seen, through talking to, a lot of people. It seems to be that seems to be the sort of, in the kind of minds of most people, that's the kind of default. Okay, it's like, oh, you role-playing, I've played D&D, and then people branch out from there, sort of thing. So, yeah, I mean, I think not half the battle, as if it, I'm not trying to change hearts and minds, but, opening the door to sort of other systems is kind of a that's something that should be done, I think, quite a lot, but more often than it is, because I think a lot of people kind of get involved in it and think that D&D is the whole thing. It's like, oh, we're playing D&D, and if you're doing something else, it's like, oh, you're doing sci-fi D&D. It's like, no, it's similar, it's a different thing, maybe you should try it, sort of thing. So it's I mean, that's part of the reason why on here I kind of had an idea of when we started of like, okay, I want to start with D&D, but I want to do all these other systems, mainly because I've already bought the books like some kind of hoarder that I am. Need a reason to run them. But yeah, it's it shouldn't be the be all end all, basically. No,
and I do have a number of games on shelf that I've never run. I'm not entirely sure I ever will, but that's that's the way it goes, and that's partly because when we go, oh, what are we going to play next? I often reach for a Grant Howitt one-page RPG, because they're always fun and they require basically no work to run and to learn. So and then we stick to things. No, but I have the What's Old Is You science fiction system, and I bought the Mecha Hack because I'm a sucker for walking robots. I have those both sitting there, and me thinking, I don't know if and when I'll ever run those.
Yeah, I've got a couple of books on my shelf like that of like, oh, this looks really cool. I'm going to back the Kickstarter. I'm going to get all the stuff, and then they arrive and they go on the shelf, and I go, I don't know anyone who will play that with me. So yeah, I feel the pain there, sort of thing. But yes, I mean, speaking of the one page RPGs, then I mean, you were kind enough to invite me to join the session of Jason Statham's Big Vacation that you ran for the digital Dragon Meet this past year. It was a lot of fun. I mentioned that when I spoke with Fiona, we talked about it briefly again there, and I think we both agreed it was quite a breakneck speed, I think was the term we used for it.
Yeah, I mean, when I run it, usually I think, 45 minutes to an hour, that's fine. And so we had an hour, but of course I hadn't taken into account that we would be doing some introduction and introducing ourselves, and then we would also do plugs at the end, and that we had enough players that it was quite a lot of chaos. So we didn't move from one scene to the other quite as quickly as I was used to, and I think we got to the half-hour mark and we were still in the first scene, and I think we were still trying to decide whether or not Jason had jumped out of the helicopter or not. And at that point, I was thinking, we are going to have to ramp up the speed here, or we're never going to get in.
Yeah,
because you're supposed to play 4 scenes, and we only actually managed 3.
I'm trying to remember how it ended. Were we in the art gallery section or something, and there was a sniper?
Yeah, so there was a sort of pop-up art gallery that had been set up in Butlins in... where was
it Slough or Staines?
It was Slough,
like
Butlins, that's right, which had managed to hire the Mona Lisa.
As you do.
So, as you do. And that was... So that was the final scene, and the denouement was as Wesley Snipes shot at the group and missed everybody but exploded Jason's enormous bag of cocaine. It descended into a cocaine-fueled dance party, and I think that's where we landed.
I mean, what better way to end a session?
As soon as it happened, I realised that we had our ending and it was all going to be fine.
Yeah.
But yeah, in between, things had to move really fast.
I got to play the private security that was trying to keep Jason's, as safe as humanly possible, and I believe I got to do like a cool bodyguard dive at the end there.
Yep. I think that was very much. I think in front of the bullet, you dived in front. You also, I think, worked really hard to get him out of the glass sphere that was rolling underwater, in which he was slowly drowning.
Yeah, and I think, did I start drowning while trying to do that? I can't remember, or did I get
very
shot?
Possibly.
I got bitten by a shark or something or other.
Either way, listener, yes, it's every bit as mad as it sounds. It is just the best game, and the show is available on our YouTube channel if you want to watch AJ being the security guard who has it was 3 important powers. The first of which is these hands are weapons. The second is these weapons are also weapons. And
I'm not sure if I used that one, actually.
I don't think you did. No, but the one you used the most was extraction.
Yeah,
which we stressed the meaning of extraction at various points.
I need to rewatch it. It was a lot of fun, though. I'll definitely have to head back over to your YouTube channel and watch it. I was wondering where the VOD ended up, actually. So that's good, because I was thinking about it the other day. I was thinking, God,
we are. Yeah. I think it's fair to say we are not at the point where Twitch will allow us to keep our videos up forever. But I think that one I just downloaded from Twitch and then uploaded to YouTube. But we now, when we stream to my Facebook, Twitch, and to YouTube. So
it's archived at least somewhere.
It is now archived, which means we've got content for our YouTube channel, because for an awful long time, well, we put our audio podcasts up and then nobody watched them. And it was just another job I had to do whenever I published an episode, and I have stripped away the ones that got absolutely no traction, because no one is paying me to do it, and if it wasn't achieving anything, then it was just hassle I didn't need.
Yeah, I put our episodes up on, well, I guess it's kind of still my personal YouTube channel, although for the longest time, the only things really I've been putting up on there are the audio versions of the episodes, and I pretty much just, like yourself, I'm sort of not seeing a lot of traction through putting episodes up on YouTube. I know I'm not saying zero, but compared to everywhere else we put them, it seems like YouTube's not really the place for just pure audio sort of podcasts. Or at least maybe I'm not. I'll be the first to admit I'm not great at self-promotion. I'm not great at putting our stuff out there. But yeah, there's a lot of what you say there is kind of ringing very familiar.
Well, the last episode we put up has a total of 10 views. And that was the point at which I decided that for the time it takes to import the audio, input the picture that I'm going to use, upload it, put the description on, all that jazz, 10 people, it was not worth it. I did get one email from what I can only assume is our superfan saying, "Are you going to put the rest on YouTube? Where's the rest?" So I just shared him with our Google Drive folder with all of our episodes in, because I wasn't going to put them all on YouTube just for him. But if he hadn't found podcasting, then, there it is. Harold, our superfan, has access to all of those now.
I will call that superfan VIP access then, getting direct access to the Google Drive.
Exactly. I should probably charge for it, and then maybe we'd pay for better hosting. But,
So, I mean, talking about platforms then, I mean, where did you start with the D20 Future Show? Has it always been sort of... Because I guess you've got the sort of Podomatic page I saw, so it's always been up just generally on kind of iTunes and things, or did you... Because I know a few people sort of started on SoundCloud and then, for one reason or another, kind of moved away from that.
I think, well, I'm a hardcore podcast fan. I think it's fair to say. I mean, right now I have... I'm doing quite well because I only have 26 unlistened to episodes in my podcast queue. So that's episodes. I have many more than 26 podcasts I listen to, I think. So podcast platforms seem like the obvious place when we went for the journey of, we're having fun, it would be nice to listen to this back. Maybe other people would like to listen to this through to me publishing as a podcast, which, because I owned quite a lot of audio gear already, wasn't an incredibly long journey. But I thought, well, I wonder how podcasts work, because lots of people have podcasts, and many of them don't seem to be tech geniuses. And so I did a bit of work, and then Podomatic, I can't remember why I settled on them. It may have been they offered the largest free hosting at the time or something, but whatever it was, I picked them. We also had a SoundCloud presence, but again, I think only Alid from our cast listened to it on SoundCloud. So when he found a podcast app that he liked for his phone, we had no listeners on SoundCloud, and all I would get is alerts from people claiming to be record companies telling me that they like my sound and that I could guarantee me downloads. So the SoundCloud, I think, still exists, and we put trailers and stuff on there so that there's an easy accessible link. But otherwise, we've stopped with that. We stopped with YouTube, and it's just available on all of your good, neutral, and evil podcast platforms.
So how long have you guys been going now? I did take a quick look. I mean, you've got to be, 3.5, 4 years now?
Yeah, it must be something like that. Because they don't archive on Podomatic, I'm not entirely sure, because we have a certain amount we're allowed to upload, and after that I delete them to make room for the new episodes. Right, yeah.
They got like a set storage space sort of thing.
Yeah. A set storage and a set bandwidth, although we've never troubled the bandwidth.
I think when we first started, I kind of went... I took the plunge on Podbean, getting like an unlimited plan, so that I wouldn't have to worry about that. Mainly because my previous podcast, which is called Sup Dude, which is it's long gone, but I've obviously a similar thing. I've got all the files on my computer still, but I wasn't going to keep paying the hosting. We went for a slightly cheaper option, still on Podbean, but it was, I think we had 100 megabytes a month of storage space. Like, it would keep all the stuff archived on there, but we could only add 100 megabytes of data, new data onto our stuff. And I was sort of looking at when we started this and going, how big's an episode going to be? Well, I don't know how long they're going to be. I did some file size things, and I thought, well, if I'm putting them up every 2 weeks like the plan is, I'm not going to, I'm definitely going to be hitting that 100 megabyte thing. So it's a tough decision, I think, setting them up of sort of how deep into it you want to go and that. And I must say I haven't really looked at Podomatic as a service, to be honest. But yeah. That said, I don't really remember why I settled on Podbean to begin with, to be honest. I might literally have just Googled podcast hosting. It might have been the first one that came up, and I went, oh, that seems a reasonable price, kind of thing.
Yeah, I think having had relatively modest ambitions, which I think it's fair to say we kind of meet about how many people would listen and so on. I never thought I could justify spending money on it. So I had to find one, and so we have a certain amount we're allowed to keep up there, and I delete the old episodes and upload new ones. Yeah, and that seems to work. And I keep an archive on our Google folder, which apparently is able to be accessed by VIPs, and that keeps us kind of archived. But otherwise, and that was originally one of the reasons why we put things on YouTube, is because they don't have a limit, it would seem, as to how much you can upload. Oh yeah, or at least if we weren't coming anywhere close to it. So. So it would kind of be archived forever, but as I say, nobody listened to it. It was hard work. I think I have a sneaky feeling that I didn't use Podbean because I'd heard of them, and in some kind of hipster kind of instinct, I thought, well, I'll not use the best known one. I'll try somebody else. But I now live in fear that should I have to switch podcast provider, I'll do that thing that podcasts do when they have some kind of glitch, which is that you look down in your phone and you see that there are now 200 episodes on your phone, and you think, oh, which podcast has had a problem? And you see their entire back catalogue is now sitting on your in your podcast queue, and you have to delete them all. Yeah, it's the same. It's one you've already listened to, and they've tweaked something or other, and it's gone, oh, no, you haven't listened to these then. Yeah, so I live in terror of having to switch over. I suppose what I hope is that we will reach the point where we start to trigger the bandwidth problems, and there are enough people out there who might be prepared to give us $1 on Patreon that I might be able to afford the hosting. Yeah, but for now, it's safe to say then that so when episodes go up, it's kind of a limited time sort of limited time thing then for people to kind of grab them before they're gone for the unless they've got the VIP access. That is. Yeah, and it's a fairly ephemeral thing. Although, if you are desperate to listen to one, by all means, email me, and I'll share them with you. If you care enough to get in touch, then you're bound to want to listen to them enough. But so June 2020 is the oldest episode that I can see available. So it's a limited time, but it's a decent length of time. So you got a good. If you haven't listened by then then it's possible that you didn't care enough. So to sort of slightly change gears then, so you guys have been going, let's say 3.5, 4 years maybe. What kind of, as a group, sort of drew you together, or sort of gave you the sort of push to go, oh, well, let's start podcasting, let's start recording our games rather than just sort of playing at home? Well, as I kind of hinted, the kind of the distance between us starting to play and it turning into a podcast really might have been 3 or 4 sessions. Oh, wow, that quickly. It was really, really quick. It just, after our first session, our first couple of sessions, someone said, oh, we should record these and listen to them back. And I put out an iPod. It's an iPad, I think. Yeah, put out an iPad and press record on Evernote. Because the voice memo at the time limited how long you could record for, but didn't tell you. I've been burned on that a couple of times. But Evernote will record for as long as you want. So yeah, I put that out and recorded it, and the sound quality is pretty terrible. But we recorded the session, and we all had a lovely time, and I shared it around, and people had agreed that it was funny, and we'd had a good time. And somebody suggested maybe other people would want to listen to this. And as I say, being a really kind of quite an enthusiastic podcast fan, and what I listen to kind of changes over time. But I've been listening to podcasts for I don't know, 10 years or more, kind of quite seriously. Used to be lots of science fiction podcasts. I just say science fiction, short fiction podcasts. Whereas now it tends to be lots of role-play game podcasts, but that's just as your interests change, these things change. And yeah, having gone, I think we've got something that's worth putting out as a show. I stuck up a couple of microphones that I owned, plugged into a laptop, press record, and and we kind of haven't looked back. I mean, it's interesting you say like you say you're already into podcasts. It's not the biggest leap to go, so I'm going to put one out.
that was kind of how I got into the whole scene as well. Really, I mean, like I say, my previous one, Subdued, it wasn't really tabletop related, although we did occasionally, I mean, I say occasionally, a lot of the time we're talking about sort of geeky stuff, but we never really did much in the way of sort of tabletop related content. It was more, it was the stereotypical, how have I described it before? The stereotypical two white guys talking about pop culture kind of podcast. But I mean,
a rare niche in the market.
Yeah. I mean, there's not enough of them these days, really, are there?
But I have to say, when we recorded, it almost felt like we'd almost invented the Actual Play podcast when we did it, and then it turns out everybody's got one of those as well.
Yeah, they do now, at least. Anyway, I feel like I see new ones popping up all the time, but that's not a bad thing. The more people doing things.
Absolutely. I think. I often think there's enough, there's enough pie to go around. I don't think I lose listeners because there's another better podcast out there. So I think people who listen to podcasts listen to lots of them.
Yeah,
but it was in fact a D&D Actual Play podcast that got me interested in tabletop role playing. So which was I think is an unusual route to get into, or certainly was at the time. I think lots of people cite Critical Role as a way they get into D&D nowadays. But it was the Sanspants radio show D&D is for Nerds.
Okay, I haven't actually heard of that one.
It goes through kind of up and down quality, I think it's fair to say, from a listener's point of view. But the first season is stone cold genius. I suspect an accident of chemistry makes it so good. But the Adam Carl, who is one of the Sanspants radio crew, who are a group of stupid podcasters. They do a range of things. Plumbing the Death Star, I think, is the first of theirs I'm across.
Okay.
In which they take a pop culture question and squeeze all of the sense out of it. I think somebody on another podcast I listened to had said that they'd been part of a recording session for a season that was called D&D is for James. Which was heavily inspired by Moby Dick and went every bit as well as you can imagine. So I thought, that's fun. I was at the time doing some quite long hours commissioning a soft drinks factory, which was a lot of sitting around waiting for them to find out what the problem was that was nothing to do with my bit of it. So there was a lot of sitting around waiting, and so past listening became a kind of essential part of staying sane. And I found D&D's for Nerds, and there was kind of Adam, who is deeply steeped in Dungeons and Dragons since he was a child, which I suspect means probably because he's younger than I am, because it turns out everybody is these days.
I definitely feel that one. It's interesting. Like you say, that you got into it through listening to a podcast. I mean, I feel like that's becoming more and more of a thing these days. Like you say, a lot of people cite Critical Role. Back in the day, I feel like it was more common to sort of either, an older sibling would sort of say, here's what we're doing, or you'd stumble across it, a game of that kind of sort of type in like a sort of, what's the term, a friendly local gaming store, or even in just like a bookshop, and say, oh, this looks cool, I'll check it out. But the internet, the number of sort of avenues for like seeing long form kind of performances, long form game recordings has definitely gone up. I mean, I remember when I first kind of started looking at D&D, I mean, the first game I played was Star Wars Saga Edition RPG. But I think before that, I'd checked out there was a series. In fact, it was the early Acquisitions Incorporated ones, which were a podcast before they did kind of live shows and that. And it had Will Wheaton on it and that, but it was the guys from Penny Arcade with Chris Perkins DMing. And that was basically, it was your options for listening to D&D online or whatever was that, or a bunch of very low quality YouTube videos of people who really weren't presenting it as a show. They just had a video camera set up in the corner of the room or something, which were basically unwatchable. And that was it. We're talking
absolutely.
Yeah, we're talking before Critical Role or any kind of long form sort of streamed games and things. So it was, just in the last, I want to say, 7 or 8 years, the whole thing has really sort of turned around. I would say in terms of accessibility through media rather than. Yeah, so it's quite interesting. That's how you got into it.
Yeah, and I definitely, when trying to get some clarification on how on earth D20 Modern, which was the first game I picked up, worked, searching on YouTube videos and then seeing 4 people sitting around, and it just I didn't learn anything about how the game worked from there. It was very difficult to learn.
That was definitely my experience as well. Like I think when we started playing, I played Star Wars Saga Edition kind of as a home game for, I think we did it for like 2 years. And there was a number of times where I was like, I don't know how to do a certain thing. I need to look it up. And there's nothing anywhere. I think the game was out of print at that point, but that's not the point. There was definitely, there should have been a community and that. Oh, and if it was this step, it was, if we're looking at it in 2020 or 2021, there would be 10 to 15 shows, playing that game.
Yeah, absolutely. A couple of podcasts, definitely some Twitch streamers, stuff on YouTube. There's a wealth out there, and then Facebook groups where you can ask questions and so on.
None of that though when I was doing it. So I was basically sort of bumbling my way through and just sort of making weird rulings here and there. I mean, it was the first game I'd played. It was the first game, and I immediately was in there as the game master as well, pretending I knew what I was doing. So it was. The changing landscape's it's quite interesting. But it's all a good thing as far as I'm concerned. More people getting into it, and that is all good.
Absolutely, and I think having a video to watch with production values and really good players and all that makes it so much easier to see how it works. I mean, as I say, this evening running Donkey with some people from a Discord channel, and I've never read the player's handbook. It was at Christmas that I owned. I got for Christmas on D&D Beyond the player's handbook, Monster Manual, and the DM's Guide. But before that, I was doing it because I just played it enough, and only then, when I was playing it, I only knew how to do that because I'd seen enough episodes of Critical Role and heard enough podcasts to know all these things worked.
Yeah.
So I've absorbed 5th Ed by osmosis rather than sat down and read it.
Sort of learning it by context clues, sort of thing.
Yeah, exactly that, and partly because a lot of it's on the character sheet, and the rest is roll 20 leg numbers. So it's easy, but how riding on horseback works and stuff like that, I suddenly realised I've no idea my players are going to get on horse, and I don't even have a thing to look it up because it's not in the basic rules. So I'm just going to have to make something up.
I've been lucky that none of my players have tried to do any kind of mounted combat, because I definitely would have to work that out. I'd have to look that up before doing anything.
Yeah, I mean, it feels like a very weird thing because it is not part of the kind of the D&D culture to get a horse, and yet the kind of vaguely equivalent medieval period, a horse is the way people get about.
Yeah.
So it's curious that it's not more part of the game. I think maybe because it's a bit fiddly.
I haven't really clocked that before, but you're right. There's barely any. I mean, horses are kind of treated as like, okay, this is our way. We get from town to town, maybe. But really, there's no talk about any. Like I say, like there's no jousting. There's no nothing. That's really. Or
even when you're jumped by bandits on the road.
Yeah.
There's a sort of agreement that everyone gets off their horses.
Yeah, everyone's
before
on
it starts.
God, wow, that's actually really. Wow, that, yeah. I'm going to have to look up some rules, I think, because that seems like not an oversight, it's just an odd thing. Yeah.
They are in there, because I read them quite recently, although I can't remember what they were. I think, essentially, horses move faster, and when you target a rider, it's either the horse or the rider.
Okay.
In combat, but I can't remember whether you get any advantage for being on horseback. Which I feel like you definitely should. Otherwise, cavalry wouldn't have been such a thing.
Well, we'll do a one shot where it's like all mounted combat all the time. Nobody's allowed off their horse at any point during the one shot.
Absolutely, yeah. If you get on the horse, you die.
Yeah. The floor is lava, but the horses are immune to the lava.
Some kind of adamantium horseshoes.
Yes, yeah, definitely. I feel like I maybe need to put a bit more thought into it than that, but yeah.
Yeah.
So anyway, to circle back then. So you said you sort of you picked up D20 Future as your first, or was it D20 Modern? You said as your first.
D20 Modern, where D20 Future is essentially a supplement for D20 Modern.
So was that? Did you play that for long before you sort of went into the podcasting thing, or was this? Did you have much of a gaming history before your current group decided to start podcasting, or was this quite a quick development?
Almost none at all. So I just vaguely aware of Dungeons and Dragons and role-playing culture, but very vaguely through mostly playing card games and in fact wargaming at my friendly local gaming store, which wasn't and probably still is Fanboy 3 in the of Manchester, which is a great place, and the owner allowed me to store my substantial 20mm science fiction games army in his basement, just because I ran games there every now and again.
Nice.
He was incredibly nice, and it was good because I lived in a small house that didn't have room for my large Star Grunt army. I say armies. I have a few. I live in a bigger house now, and I've taken them back. But yeah, so I was vaguely aware of gaming, but my brother was up for the weekend and offered to run some D20 Modern, knowing that I'm more into fiction than I am into fantasy. I think that's why he suggested it, but it's a game he had. And he ran a sim with myself and friends, and I had a lovely time and thought, this is a thing I'm going to do. And I rushed out the book and then put it on a shelf. And then many years later, when the first time I started suffering from insomnia, I thought, well, I might as well use this time because I'm not sleeping. And so I read through, and having read through D20 Modern, thought, yeah, I reckon I can do this. And I must confess, there was searching for anyone to explain on the internet a few things that I simply couldn't make sense of. That in the end, I realised that my brother probably could explain, and he did. That got my decision to be able to read it. And then, invited some friends round, of whom was also an enthusiastic Ds for Nerds fan, it turns out, and a couple of other friends. And we played the first session of what turned into the first campaign of the D20 Future Show. So it was, I think I'd run maybe 2 sessions before we started podcasting them.
So really, other than the game your brother ran you sort of earlier on, then it was quite a quick transition from starting to roleplay to recording. Then that's
to putting it out, which may show staggering arrogance. Now I look back on it.
Well, no, I mean, I don't think, like you said, you're into podcast anyway, So I don't think it's the arrogance thing. I think it's just the
bar to entry is very low for podcasts. In that you need to be vaguely tech savvy enough to follow some instructions on the internet. It's the audio stuff is kind of the most difficult bit. I already had a bit of experience with that as a sort of having recorded some music stuff. So I had bits of knowledge about it, and I am now a significantly better editor than I was back then. I've had to learn.
Yeah.
Fortunately, a lot of people seem to use Audacity, which is a wonderful piece of software, but it's not one I would want to edit in.
Oh god, I would have a nervous breakdown if I had to use Audacity for the kind of stuff I'm doing. I mean, I'm so used to using Cubase because I've had it since I was. I've had it for music recording personally for quite a long time, but it was what I learned doing all kind of audio work on way back when I was doing my A-levels, and so I'm just kind of used to the format now. So I've looked at Audacity a couple of times, and it just sounds kind of snobbish really, but it looks like such a downgrade from what I'm used to that I don't know if I'll be able to handle it, sort of thing.
Well, I mean, I also use Cubase, and so using any other piece of software seems pretty alien, but we used to, because of the laptop I recorded on, we used to record on Audacity, and I would import them to my PC, which has Cubase on, and edit in that. So I have used both, but I don't have the editing chops for Audacity, which I'm told is radio industry standard. That's what people use, which continues to amaze me. But Cubase has sorry, not Cubase, Audacity has some good things, one of which is noise reduction, or his noise reduction plugin, which I haven't found its equal anywhere else. It's really superb. You select a section of the noise and then clean it up. And every interview you've ever heard that I've recorded at a convention has been cleaned up in in Audacity before I've brought it into Cubase, because I just can't find a plugin that does the same job.
I was going to say, I mean, I think I first met you doing, this would have been, when would it have been? It was a year before, it would have been 2018 probably, at Dragon Meet. And
yeah,
you were doing
that'll be my first Dragon Meet.
There. And there was a lot of background noise in that hall. That's all I can remember. So,
yes.
Yeah.
Like brutally difficult, but I think there's still some on the recordings that I put out, but it's a noisy hall because it's a relatively small, full of people all talking.
Yeah,
not entirely filled with podcasters interviewing the podcasters, although it's a little bit that way.
A little bit. You had quite a convenient sort of mobile setup, if I remember right.
Well, actually, I just sort of followed Callum round. Callum, who is almost entirely responsible for my kind of presence within the UK RPG podcasting scene, such as contact on Twitter, sort of out of the book as far as I listened to a few of the Rolling podcasts. I was sort of vaguely aware of him, but he said, "Hey, come be part of the pod zone at Dragon Meet. It will happen." And I said yes. The grounds there was a free ticket to a thing that sounded fun. As ever with these things, quite an expensive free kit, and I had to pay for my hotel.
Oh yeah, I mean there's travel and everything.
I can't. There's literally no way I could wait anywhere else to pay for that for what I would. But and then Callum was like, "Right, I'm going to introduce you to a person," and dragged me to the next person, banged a mic in front of me, and watched the interview. It was a bit intense, but I got lots of interviews recorded that year. Since which time, I've got a little handy stuff that plugs into an iPhone or an iPad, which is pretty good. But I'm significantly cheaper than buying a cam box like I had.
Yeah, I think I'm still quite a ways away from being able to do any Atacon recordings. I mean, I'm used to my home setup so much, I think is what it is. And I've never been a laptop guy. I'm not a tablet owner really. I've got a Kindle that I never use, and that's about as far as it goes. And so yeah, it would. Yeah, I'm surrounded by cables, is what I'm trying to say. And the idea of lugging even a fraction of that up to London to on my own on a train is more than I can stomach. So my hat's off to you there. for
yeah, and I definitely I have thought about laptops and stuff, because the gear I have is significantly better than my sort of portable interview kit, but it just doesn't make any sense. I've always got slightly more stuff than you need anyway, so why add on top of that a laptop and an interface and microphones? And so I have a little Lavella microphone kit with two of those that go into a box that plugs into an iPhone, and it's pretty good.
With an eye to sort of bringing this towards a landing, what have you got coming up that you would like to sort of plug for listeners? If you've got stuff that you've announced yet, I don't want to put you on the spot for an exclusive or anything, but what's coming up soon for the D20 Future Show?
No, that's fine. So we are, as far as the podcast, we are continuing. A podcast listener will notice, hopefully join. We are continuing our superhero adventure. So we have a session, we have a lost session that we're going to sort of try and fill in, which how to work on audio, I'm not sure. But we lost the best sound session we've ever recorded, both from content and from sound quality. My wife, who is a vocal coach, had bought some soundproofing, with which we some portable proofing we put up in the room where we record, and it sounded so good. So the fact that I thought I'd got an export of that and then deleted the source files haunts me to this day. Well, there's only so much of my wife's work laptop that I feel I can cut with these files. But particularly when I know I've mixed down the audio correctly, but what I did was I mixed down 3 synth tracks. So we have nothing, which is, as you can tell, I'm totally over it, and it's totally fine. So we're going to sort of reconstruct and recap what happened on that, but otherwise there will be no join. But we've been live streaming on Twitch, as I said, and Facebook and YouTube. Our kind of every other Tuesday night at 6:30 GMT. We've played a few. If basically whenever he isn't available, we've played a few silly games. Which include Sexy Battle Wizards, which is rapidly approaching my second favourite game after Jason Statham's Big Vacation. It's just tremendous stuff. It always gives you an exciting, interesting, and completely stupid story. With the absolute implication that at least one of your players will attempt to solve a problem by seducing somebody. It's sort of baked into the rules.
It's even in the title of the game, really, isn't it?
It is. And your 3 stats are sexy, little, and wizard. It's just great. So we've been playing that sort of thing, which all are available as our, or which some of it is available on our YouTube channel, but everything going forward will be. You can also catch that live on Twitch. But I'm going to go back to having taken a slightly, I think, almost a year break from that while we played D&D, which I recorded, but I'm not going to put out because I'm not happy with the quality, and it's a sort of monolith that's staring at me. So unless we absolutely run out of audio to put out, that will sit in the vaults. So yeah, we're returning to our superhero campaign. If and when that concludes, I have a kind of, at least an end of season kind of moment. The big bad guy, whoever he mysteriously is he the mysterious billionaire? Is he someone else? He's the mysterious tech billionaire. When the villain is defeated and his plan is unfolded, there's going to be a sort of tea for the next season. And then we were going to play The Expanse RPG for as long as it takes to work through Abzu's Bounty, which is the only published campaign for it.
A lot to look forward to then.
Yeah, so we've got it mapped out, and then I think we might play some D&D to satisfy the fantasy people in our group, whether that's a homebrew pay or I have, as I say, Storm King's Thunder, which I'm getting to know as a different group. But also I got Waterdeep and Heist on D Beyond for Christmas, so
nice. Yeah, I haven't
maybe one of those.
I've got the book of that. I haven't really properly gone through it to sort of. What I tend to do is buy the published adventures, going, yeah, this looks cool. Never run them, and occasionally get round to stripping cool items or like occasional sort of like, oh, that's kind of cool in concept. How can I take that one bit and maybe tweak it to fit our setting or something? Yeah, which really is a kind of waste of money buying an adventure book and not running the adventure, but that's
But it definitely
I have a problem.
But I only bought Storm King's though because I sort of wanted to know how other people wrote adventures and campaigns, and without you can watch them unfold, but unless you see what they're working from, you can't really know. And I sort of I wanted some help with that. I had enough hotel points from Hilton, enough Hilton points because of work. That I was able to buy it on Amazon just using points.
Oh,
so I bought that. So it was in fact free. Definitely felt like the right price to pay for a book I wasn't sure I was going to use.
Can't argue with free.
But I'm now running tubes on alternating Friday nights through it with my own game, Fantasy Adventure, with a bunch of teenagers. Because Fantasy Adventure is significantly simpler than D&D to run. But also, as I say, running on, in fact, in not very long time, running with some guys on Discord who I found during lockdown, or during lockdown 1, who tried. I thought, well, I have this adventure, so I thought I'd try it. It's a chunky beast. There's a lot in there, and but it's kept us going a very long time, and we are, by no means halfway through it. There's a lot of content there. We also are running a series of interviews. Every other week put out an actual play episode, and alternate weeks we have a lockdown interview series, which AJ has taken part in, which I'm really lucky to find just a wonderful collection of people to let me know how lockdown has affected their role-playing game experience. We've had some fantastic interviews, including Chris Pramer from Green. I've had half of the Smart Party podcast, and at some point I'll track down the other half. AJ, I'm hoping to catch Fiona from What Am I Rolling at some point. The Hannah from Dragon Wings. So a really wonderful collection of people letting me know how lockdown has affected gaming, because I think it's really interesting.
Okay, so to bring this to a close, then, where can people find you online?
Okay, well, we're primarily a podcast, which you can find on all of the podcast platforms. I think if you find a podcast platform you can't find us on, please know, and I'll work out how to make it happen. We are, I think, probably most active as a Twitter handle, so at D20 Future Show. I love Twitter, and the D20 Future Show is the sort of role-playing Twitter bit of me, and that's great, and I love it. Do say hi. We have a Twitch channel, which is D20 Future Show, where, as I say, we stream every other week on a Tuesday at 6:30. We are available on YouTube. If you search for YouTube, just like if you search on Facebook for D20 Future, you'll find there. Although our Facebook is, I sort of feel I should have it, but I'm not entirely sure how successful that is.
Same.
I think, and yeah, I think that's. I really should be slicker at that, but I think that's all the places you can find us. So that's podcast platforms on Twitter at D20 Future Show, on Twitch, D20 Future Show, and on Facebook, YouTube, and like.
Awesome. All right, so yeah, I mean that's something all of our listeners should go check out your show. It's a lot of fun, and be sure to check out that VOD on the YouTube channel of us playing Jason Statham's, because that was a real highlight of my gaming in 2020. As far as us, as always, we're available on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram, all of which we're at Pretend with Dice. For those who are inclined, you can find us on Ko-fi or Ko-fi, I don't know, at ko-fi.com/pretending with dice. And finally, we'd love for you all to join us on our Discord server, the links to which are in our Twitter bio and on the contact page of our Podbean site. Thanks so much for joining me, Richard. This has been a real fun discussion.
A pleasure.
And I think as usual, I'm terrible at ending a podcast episode, so we'll just call that the end. I think. Thank you so much for joining me.